Well, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. For there were a few minutes when I didn't know if I'd be just practicing my presentation. But this is an opportunity. I had the poster display last year, and I had worked so hard on it that I went ahead and applied this year. And so I hope to help you to kind of connect to some things I've connected to as I analyze my teaching career in terms of how persuasive teachers are when they teach. And so I am from Congressional School, which happens to be an independent school in Falls Church, Virginia, just outside of D.C. And I teach 5th grade American history and 6th grade global perspectives. And so the topics that I'm going to talk about hopefully will touch on some of the aspects. And I have my own school Twitter and Facebook account, so if you're ever interested, you can see more of what I do with the students. And so one of the things I'm very indebted to is my professional learning network, which we all have when we find resources that we can appreciate and share and create and use. And so nothing that I do is really completely original. I am so indebted to the wonderful resources that I find. And so for sure, the ability to dig deep, we don't have time to create the wheel, and the fact that we have access to so many good things is wonderful. So these are some truths that are certainly self-evident for me, that we must find ways to engage our students globally with authentic learning experiences that will connect them with others around the world, and that to retain information, students have to be emotionally connected to their learning. I realized that I was a persuasive teacher when I was working on a collaborative Global Perspectives writing assignment, and I was watching this TED video on what is a persuasive essay. And as I was taking notes, that these appeals have to be logical and emotional and moral, I was like, whoa, that's how I teach. And it was a real light bulb moment for me that I use appeals of persuasion as I plan my lessons all the time, and that I've asked my students to do the same when they communicate to each other. And so I also realized I'm not alone. There's this wonderful blog by Chris Heffernan. It talks about how we really as teachers are in the sales business. And so with that, I'm going to present my presentation of how I am a persuasive teacher. The first appeal is logical, and that's where we base our arguments on statistics, research, facts, expert opinion. And the quote here is that without data, you're just another person with an opinion. So as history teachers, global perspective teachers, we're definitely trying to educate our students factually and give them the facts that they need, the data that they need in order to wrap their brain around the population that was impacted or whatever it might be. Expert opinions in how to decide if this is a legitimate opinion that can be factored into their understanding, and research. But it can't just be logical all the time, because they will learn enough to recite on the test, but then it's gone. And so this other element of connecting with them emotionally is very important. And to get an emotional response from our audience, we use authentic stories, and history teachers, social studies teachers are all about stories. And we want thought-provoking quotes so that we can tug at their heartstrings. So I'll start the day of the class with a thought-provoking quote and get the kids thinking that way. And Aristotle said that educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. So we want them to feel what they're learning. And then finally, the third appeal is a moral appeal, which is an appeal to their core values, their character, and their desire to do the right thing. So we ask, what actions will you personally take? And what actions have been taken? And so the quote there is, like slavery and apartheid, poverty is not natural, it is man-made, and it can be overcome and eradicated by the actions of human beings. So when our students are learning whatever the topic might be, how does this understanding affect the way you are in the lunchroom, in the cafeteria, at recess? How does it impact the way you look at your life? And so what actions are you going to take on a daily basis based on what you've learned in your classroom? And so here are some ways that I use the 3 persuasive appeals. I don't know if you've heard about Newsella, but it's a wonderful newspaper-based website, and it gives children an opportunity to read nonfiction newspaper articles. And so you can use, pick and choose Newsella to help them to think factually. So they can read an article about American slavery, separating fact from fiction. So your appeal then might be to just give them some good factual information. And there's also a writing component and they take 4 questions for comprehension. So it encompasses a lot of elements. And it also provides the reading level at 5 different reading levels. And once they've filled a few of the quizzes out, Newsella will begin to put them right into what they feel based on their comprehension into the reading zone that they need. And then you as a teacher can lock that zone so they can't go to a lower zone. So they're hopefully reading in their optimal reading zone. And so you can use something like this to appeal to their understanding and knowledge. You can also choose primary sources, like this one about Olada Ikwanu, who shares his first-person experience in the middle passage. And so this, of course, is going to give them information, it's going to give them factual information, but it's definitely going to tug at their heart, which we want. And then finally, I love Newsella for current events because I can ask my students to read opinion pieces in addition to factual pieces and emotional pieces about what's going on in the world today, from soup to nuts. And then they can then begin to feel and ask the question, well, what is being done about these issues? It's not enough for us to know that they exist. What is being done? Where are the solutions? And so this is an opportunity to have them think about what are some of the actions that other people are doing to help. Another way that we can sort of incorporate these persuasive appeals is through thinking routines. And if you've ever had an opportunity to go to WISIT through Project Zero, and I've downloaded all of this onto the website for Google if you need access to it. But this book, Making Thinking Visible, was definitely a game changer for me in just slowing down to ask my students to reflect in a visible way about what they are learning. And so, for example, when we study slavery from the perspective of the West African, I will have them do a step inside where they begin to reflect on, what that person in West Africa can see in West Africa before the slave traders came. What can they feel? What can they hear? And then what might they be thinking about, holding true, believing at that point? And what do they care about deeply? And what might they be wondering and questioning? And so I have them, from the perspective of the West African, looking at their experience in West Africa, and it goes from before the slave trade to after. So it moves from drum beats and fathers and storytelling and griots and blacksmiths and whatever it might be, and villages and cities, to this dilemma of being kidnapped. And then on the middle passage, I have them think, what are the words and phrases that you can capture that help people that put you in their place. And then finally, what was slavery in the colonies like? Another way that they can think visibly is to have them do a concept map. And when you incorporate the appeals, you ask them, okay, think if you want to put up a fact, or if you want to tug at the heart, perhaps a quote, or if you want to talk about what should be done. And so in this exercise, I ask the students to reflect on why we should have a global perspective. And so they begin to write about their findings, their thinking, what they had learned from our class for the entire year. So this was a cumulative exercise. And after they were finished writing, then we began to identify and connect ideas and thoughts, and what tugged at our heart got a heart, you know, what made us think connected to something else that made us think. And so just even getting them to kind of incorporate all of those elements as they're processing what they've learned and how they've learned it. Another thinking routine is I used to think and now I think. And that's a very important thing to have the kids reflect that their thinking should change after they've learned something. So one of the initiatives in our 5th and 6th grade is a service learning project around reduction of single-use plastics. So we asked the students to reflect on that. And so tying to the emotions, of course, we had to have our little puppet steward, which we brought. Your steward. And, you know, the kids, oh, his little straw is still stuck in there really, really deep. Poor little steward. And so, again, this tugs at the heart. And as soon as I saw an actual video of someone taking a straw from a turtle's nose, I began reducing single-use plastics in my life. So my emotions were tugged at, and that's all it took. And so we brought them all together and talked to them about the 3 appeals and asked them to do research with that mindset, either logical, emotional, or action. And so we shared some facts with them about single-use plastics, that these would be similar facts that one would share if they were appealing to someone with data. So we shared that. And then we shared some pretty heart-rending videos that tugged at their emotions. And then finally, some examples of students who are helping their community take action to reduce single-use plastics. And then they did their research, they broke into groups, and they reflected, based on which group they broke into, what they used to think and what they think now, based on factual information, emotional things that they saw that tugged at them, or things that they used to do in terms of single-use plastics and things that they're going to do now. So again, it's not what I do all the time, or the kids would get so sick of 3 perspectives again, Ms. Yassine, but it is something that we bump into often in class. Another one is what stuck with you today. I have this on the door of my, the window of my door, and so often I'll say, you know, here's your Post-it notes, what stuck with you today about what you learned. And, you know, they can run the gamut of a fact that you heard during a student presentation, or a story that you heard that you had never thought of immigration that way when you saw the actual story of the person experiencing that. And also, what actions might you want to take? See, think, wonder. So because I teach slavery, I talk to the kids about what life was like in the colonies, and I have them see and think and wonder about this picture. And then we go to West Africa, and I have them do the same. And then we begin to make the connection that in both pictures there are mothers, fathers, grandparents, aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters. In both pictures, they begin to see that these people want the same things. They want food, shelter, clothing. They're willing to work very hard for it. They're actively engaged in providing for their families. And once that heart understanding comes, then you can begin to weave into, in history, we can just look at these pictures and step away and see it as they long time ago, and it was those people and not us. But we want to add color to this understanding so that they say, that could have been the village griot, and he held all of the stories for the village. Maybe this was the blacksmith, and he was the one who gave these incredible tools. And perhaps this one was, this mother is concerned about her child here behind her and wondering what's going to happen. So tugging at their heart and insisting that they don't look at things so far away that they don't start to care. And of course you have to be sensitive to your population. That's always something we have to think about. I have 2 West African young men in my 5th grade class this year, and I sit with them and I talk with them and I share with them what I'm going to talk about today, and I give them the opportunity to contribute or to not, or to step out or whatever, and so we try to be aware of that. And so